It's 1897, a packed courtroom in Greenbrier County, West Virginia. A man named Zona Shue is on trial for the murder of his young wife, Zona. The evidence is thin. Very, very thin. Trout's lawyer is confident. He's about to destroy the prosecution's only real witness, the victim's mother, Mary Jane Hester. He leans in, a smug look on his face, and he asks the one question he thinks will win him the case. "Mrs. Hester, tell the jury about the ghost." He smiles, the courtroom chuckles, and he thinks he just exposed her for being a lunatic. He has no idea he's just lost his case. Now, we tell ghost stories around campfires, in our homes, on dark roads. We call them urban legends, folklore, ghost stories. We use them to scare each other, to feel a chill, but we all know that they're all just stories, right? Most of the time, yes. But deep in the ancient hills of Appalachia, the line between story and reality gets thin. Sometimes, it disappears completely. Tonight, we're looking at legends that turned out to be true. The stories that stepped out of the fog and into the real world. And we're starting with one of the most incredible cases of them all. A story so bizarre, it's almost unbelievable. Except one small detail. It's all right there in official court records. This is the story of the Greenbrier Ghost, the one and only time in American history that the testimony of a spirit was used to convict a killer. Our story begins with Zona Hester. By all accounts, she was a bright, well-liked young woman living in Greenbrier County in the late 1890s. In 1896, a man named Erasmus Shue, though everybody called him Trout, drifted in the town. He was a blacksmith, a new face, and he and Zona, they fell hard for each other. It was a whirlwind romance. Zona's mother, Mary Jane Hester, didn't like him. She had a bad feeling about Trout, a mother's intuition. But Zona was in love. Despite her mother's warnings, she and Trout were married. They settled into a small house near the blacksmith shop, and for a few months, it seemed like a normal, happy life. It was anything but that. On January 23rd, 1897, Trout Shue sent a young boy to his house to ask if Zona needed anything from the market. The boy went to the house, and a few minutes later he came running back out, terrified. He said he found Zona at the foot of the stairs. She was lying on the floor, stretched out, her head tilted to one side. She was dead. A local doctor, a man named George Knapp, not the UFO George Knapp, was called. And by the time he arrived, Trout Shue had carried his wife's body upstairs and laid her on the bed. He had already dressed her himself. He put her in a high-neck dress with a stiff collar, and around her neck he tied a large silk scarf. He was sobbing, overcome with grief, hovering over the body. The doctor tried to examine her, but Trout wouldn't leave her side. He cradled Zona's head, crying, getting in the way. The doctor, seeing the obvious grief of the new husband and finding no clear signs of foul play, did a very brief examination. He wrote down her cause of death as an everlasting faint, and he later amended it to complications from childbirth. It was a tragedy, a terrible, sudden tragedy. But it was rational. It made sense. Young women died suddenly in those days. Zona was buried. In the town of Greenbrier, they tried to move on. But there were things that didn't add up. At the funeral, people whispered. Trout Shue's grief, it seemed strange. He stayed by the coffin, pacing, agitated. He wouldn't let anybody get too close, especially to Zona's head. He placed a pillow on one side of her head, and that high-neck dress and that scarf. Why the scarf? Somebody asked. It's not cold in the coffin. Trout snapped at them. He said it was Zona's favorite. And then people noticed her head seemed loose. When the pallbearers moved the coffin, one of them swore they saw Zona's head flop to the side. Everybody rationalized it. He's just a grieving husband. It's the shock. Grief does strange things to a man. But Zona's mother, Mary Jane, she knew better. She knew this wasn't grief. This was something else. Mary Jane was consumed by the idea that her daughter's death was not natural. She prayed and prayed and prayed for an answer, for a sign. And one night, she got it. It was cold in her small house. A freezing rain tapped against the glass. And then, a shape began to form in the room. It was Zona. According to Mary Jane's sworn testimony, her daughter appeared to her, not as a terrifying specter, but as a cold, sad, and very real presence. She was there, she said, because she had been murdered. For 4 nights, the spirit of Zona Shue returned to her mother's bedside, and she told her the whole story. She said that Trout was a cruel man, that he had attacked her in a rage, convinced that she hadn't cooked any meat for supper. She told her mother in chilling detail how he killed her. The ghost said, he grabbed my neck and squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. He broke my neck. And then, to prove her words, the spirit slowly turned her head all the way around. Mary Jane Hester was not a woman to be trifled with. She went straight to the county prosecutor, John Preston. Now, let's think about this. It's 1897. A woman walks into the prosecutor's office and says, I want you to arrest my son-in-law for murder because my daughter's ghost told me he did it. Preston should have thrown her out, but he didn't. Maybe it was the conviction in her voice. Maybe it was the whispers that he had already heard about Trout Shue's strange behavior, or maybe he just believed her. He used Mary Jane's story to petition the court, and he won. He ordered the exhumation of Zona Shue's body. The autopsy was performed in a one-room schoolhouse, and the moment they removed that high-neck dress and that silk scarf, they knew. The everlasting faint was a lie. The doctors found finger-shaped bruises, dark and deep on her throat. Her windpipe was completely crushed, and her neck, just as the ghost had said, was broken. The vertebrae between the first and second joint had been completely snapped. The Greensboro Examiner newspaper covering the case had its headline, Trout Shue was arrested for murder. The trial was a sensation. The problem was, Preston had the motive and the means, but he got them from a ghost. And you can't put a ghost on a witness stand. But Trout's defense lawyer made a fatal mistake. He thought Mary Jane Hester was a crazy old woman. He thought if he could get her on the stand and get her to admit the story came from a ghost, the jury would laugh the case right out of the building. So he did it. he called her to the stand. And that brings us right back to the opening of our story. "Mrs. Hester," the lawyer asked, "I want you to tell the jury what you base these accusations on." Mary Jane looked him dead in the eye, and she told him. She told him everything. She told them about the 4 nights, the cold room, the sad spirit of her daughter. She told them what Zona said about the argument, and she told them about the crushed windpipe. And then she told them how the ghost turned its head. The lawyer could only stare, horrified. He had just handed the prosecution its entire case. He tried to have her testimony stricken, but the judge refused. He said the lawyer had asked the question, and the witness had just answered it. The jury went in to deliberate, and it didn't take them very long. They came back with a verdict: guilty. Trout Shue was sentenced to life in prison, and he died just 3 years later. The Greenbrier Ghost, it's a fact. Now, did the jury really believe the ghost story, or did they use the autopsy results and the mother's testimony as a way to convict a man they all knew was guilty? We'll never know. But what we do know is that the official court records, still on file in the Greenbrier County Courthouse, show that the jury heard testimony about a ghost and then convicted a man of murder. The line between legend and reality in Appalachia is thin. A ghost story is one thing. It's words. It's a feeling. But what happens when the legend has claws? What happens when the true part isn't a court record, but a police report? Because in the 1970s, ranchers in Tennessee started finding their livestock torn to pieces. And the culprit wasn't a wolf. It wasn't a bear. It was something they only ever heard about in stories. A legend that they called the Wampus Cat. And if you think a ghost story is strange, wait until you hear what that investigation uncovered. It's 1976. A Tennessee state trooper, we'll call him Officer Riley, is standing in a field just outside Elizabethton. It's cold. The steam from his coffee is fogging up his glasses. He's on a livestock call. He's expecting a coyote, maybe some wild dogs. He pushes past a broken fence line, and he stops. The smell hits him first. Copper and something else. Something burnt. He wipes his glasses, and what he sees makes no sense. The animal, a full-grown cow, isn't just eaten, it's opened. Like a surgeon did it. There are no tracks, no bloody trail, just the body. And from deep in the dark woods, a single high-pitched scream cuts through the night. A sound that is half animal and half woman. Now, we've already heard the testimony of a spirit. An actual ghost put a killer behind bars in West Virginia, and the court records prove it. But that was a story of human evil, revealed by the supernatural. What happens when the supernatural is the evil? In Appalachia, old-timers will tell you, don't go into the woods after dark. They'll warn you about all kinds of things, but they'll whisper when they talk about one. A creature born of a curse, half woman, half panther. They call it the Wampus Cat. For 100 years, it was just a story. a folktale, until the 1970s, when police in Tennessee started getting calls, and the evidence they found didn't match any animal in their books. The legend of the Wampus Cat is old, older than the state of Tennessee itself. It comes from Cherokee lore. The story goes that a young woman, in some versions named Running Deer, was jealous of the men's sacred ceremonies she was forbidden to watch. But one night, she disguised herself. Hiding under the skin of a cougar, she snuck to the edge of the sacred circle to spy. The shaman knew. He felt her presence, and he caught her. As a punishment for her sacrilege, he cursed her. He fused the cougar skin to her body, transforming her into a new creature, a monster, part woman, part cat, driven by a furious, immortal hunger. She was banished, forced to roam the Appalachian mountains forever, her cry a mix of a woman's wail and a panther's scream. It's a terrifying story, a perfect tale to tell around a campfire, and it's the reason I never left my cabin at night when I went to church camp. And that's all it was for a few generations. Until the mid-1970s. Suddenly, farmers in East Tennessee, Carter County specifically, started reporting brutal livestock attacks. This wasn't a fox getting a chicken, this was different. We're talking multiple reports filed with the police of cattle and large farm animals being, mutilated was the word they used. The ranchers who found them said the animals were killed, but not eaten. And the wounds were precise, surgical. It wasn't the sloppy work of a bear or a pack of dogs. And the tracks, they were wrong. They were like a cat's, but they were too big. Far too big for any known bobcat. And sometimes, they'd find that giant cat track right next to what looked like a small, bare human footprint. The local paper, the Elizabethton Star, started covering the story. People were terrified. They were locking their doors and keeping their children inside. The police, they were baffled. They had to issue public statements. They said it was likely a large panther, even though eastern cougars or panthers were supposed to be extinct in Tennessee. That was the rational explanation. That was the official story. But the old-timers, they shook their head. They knew what it really was. Because the other evidence, the evidence that didn't make the official report, matched the legend perfectly. People reported seeing a creature walking on two legs, then dropping to all fours to run at impossible speeds. They heard that blood-curdling scream, the one that sounded like a woman in agony. The police reports of the day, they're real. They document the panic. They document the slaughtered animals. They document the strange, unidentified tracks. The situation in Elizabethton got so bad, the National Guard was even put on alert. They swept through the woods. They set traps. They found nothing. Whatever it was too smart. Police rationalized it. It's a panther. It's a pack of wild dogs. It's a prank. They had to say it because the other possibility, the one that the locals were whispering about, was just too insane. The truth is, something terrified and stalked the residents of Carter County in the 1970s. Something strong enough to take down full-grown cattle, but not hungry enough to eat them. The police reports prove the event happened. The newspaper articles prove the fear was real. But the case, it remains unsolved. The Wampus Cat is the perfect Appalachian monster. It wears the skin of a familiar animal, but underneath, it's something human, something broken and cursed. But what if the creature isn't hiding in the skin of an animal? What if the creature is the animal? The most modern Appalachian legend isn't from the 1800s or the 1970s. Its lore is being built right now. All over the mountains, people are seeing animals that they think they recognize, until they look closer, until they see its eyes facing forward, or its knees bending the wrong way. They call it the not deer. And the scariest part, science might just prove this one is real. Imagine you're sitting on your back porch, maybe in eastern Kentucky, maybe western North Carolina. It's dusk. That perfect quiet time of night when the air turns cool. In the woods, just watch. You see a shape move at the edge of your property. It's just a deer. You relax. But then you look closer. It's not moving right. It's jerky, stuttering, like a bad animation or a film reel skipping a frame. It steps right into a patch of light, and you feel the blood drain from your face. The front legs, they're bending the wrong way, up like a bird's. It turns its head, and its eyes, they aren't on the sides of its head like normal. They're facing forward, like a wolf's, like yours. And in that one heart-stopping instant, you know two things. One, it sees you. And two, that thing is not a deer. The woods of Appalachia are ancient, and they hold secrets. We think we know the creatures that live there. We see a deer, and we think a deer. We see a coyote, we think coyote. But what if there's something else? Something that learned to hide in plain sight? Because for decades, but especially in the last few years, people in the deep woods have been reporting encounters with animals that break all the rules of nature. They look like deer, they have antlers, they have hoofs, but the locals, the people who know these woods, they have a name for them. They call them not deer. And unlike many legends, this one's happening right now. Hundreds of sightings have been documented since 2019. And the most terrifying part? The part that makes this a true story? There's a very real, horrifying disease that could be the source of the legend. But as you'll see soon, the real answer might be the scariest part of all. It almost always starts on a drive. A dark winding road in Tennessee, the kind where the trees lean in and it makes a tunnel. You see a deer on the side of the road and you slow down. But as your headlights hit it, it doesn't freeze. It twitches. It moves its front legs, but the joints bend the wrong way. Its head seems to be on a swivel, rotating almost 180 degrees. And then it darts into the woods. Its movements all wrong. Too fast. Too broken. So you sit there in your car, your heart pounding, trying to rationalize what you just saw. Was it a trick of the light? A sick animal? It had to be. Drivers report this all the time, and you can find their stories posted online, all asking the same questions. Did I see what I thought I saw? But that's not the sighting that makes your blood run cold. The scariest ones happen in your own backyard. One woman in North Carolina posted her story in 2021. She was washing dishes, looking out of her kitchen window, and saw what she thought was a deer eating her azalea bushes. Annoyed, she went and tapped on the glass to scare it off. It stopped eating, and it looked up. It wasn't scared. It just stared at her. Its eyes, she said, were on the front of its head. Now, think about that. Deer, like all prey animals, have eyes on the sides of their head to see a wide field of view, to watch for predators. Predators have eyes in the front to focus, to hunt. This thing straightened up on its hind legs. It stood there, 6, maybe 7 feet tall, and just watched her. She said it didn't look like a deer anymore. It looked like a dog, standing like a man. She backed away from the window. When she looked again, it was gone. Now, the easy answer, the rational scientific explanation, is a simple one. And it's a real one. It's called chronic wasting disease, CWD. You live in Appalachia, or really anywhere with a large deer population, you've heard of it. It's a horrible, real-life affliction spreading through deer populations across the entire country. It's a prion disease, like mad cow. It attacks the deer's brain, and the symptoms are terrifying. The animals become emaciated, walking skeletons. They lose all fear of humans. They stumble, they drool, they walk in circles. They just stare. And the media has a name for them. Zombie deer. It sounds familiar, doesn't it? It's almost a perfect match for many of the not deer sightings. A deer that acts strange and isn't afraid of you and moves erratically. So case closed, right? The not deer is just a tragic, misunderstood symptom of a very real, very sad disease. That's what the investigators thought too, until they took a closer look at the other reports. Because chronic wasting disease doesn't make a deer's knees bend backward. It doesn't shrink a snout or give it a dog-like face. It doesn't give it forward-facing eyes like a predator. And it certainly doesn't give it the intelligence to stalk a hiker or stand on a ridge, motionless, just watching a family have a picnic. The zombie deer are real. It's a documented biological fact. But they're not the only thing out there. The hundreds of sightings that have exploded since 2019 aren't all sick deer. Some of them are something else. The most chilling theory is this. CWD provides the perfect cover. We're now trained to see a deer acting strange and dismiss it. Oh, it's just a sick deer. A zombie deer. How sad. We'll rationalize it. We'll look away. And that's exactly what it wants. The not deer isn't a sick animal. The not deer is the predator that learned to mimic the sick animal. It's hiding in plain sight. Now, the woods in Appalachia are old, unbelievably old, and we think we know what's in them. We've categorized every animal, every predator, every prey. But the people who live here, like me, we know better. The people here know when you see a deer, you're safe. But when you see a not deer, you're being hunted. And that's the absolute terror of the not deer. It's a predator that's blurred the lines between the natural and the unnatural. And sometimes people in Appalachia don't just see something strange, they disappear entirely. There's a place in North Carolina that the locals know to avoid. A lonely stretch of wilderness where the trail just ends. They call it Shut-In Gap. And if you think the knot deer is scary, wait until you hear about the people who walked into those woods and never walked out. It's day 3 of the search. A 19-year-old volunteer, exhausted, pushes through the thick rhododendron brush, and he just freezes. He just found something. A single hiking boot. A child's boot. It's sitting perfectly upright on top of a large flat rock, miles from any trail. There are no other tracks. No sign of a struggle. It's just placed there. The search dogs who had been running in frantic, whining circles won't go anywhere near it. The lead ranger gets on the radio, his voice tight, trying to keep the tremble out. We found the boot. But we got a problem. We've talked about legends that came true out of sworn court testimony, like the Greenbrier Ghost. We've talked about legends that come through official police reports, like the Wampus Cat. But there's a different kind of legend in Appalachia, the kind that's written in silence, the kind that's defined by what's missing. There are places in these mountains, gaps, hollers, places where the trail gets narrow and the woods get quiet. Too quiet. One of these places, in North Carolina, is called Shut-In Gap. And it's earned its name because people go in and they simply don't come out. This isn't just a folktale. This is where the old legends of the deep woods meet the very real, very terrifying phenomenon known as Missing 411. Now let's be clear. People get lost in the Great Smoky Mountains all the time. It's tragic, but it's not a mystery. It's one of the largest, wildest, and most rugged areas in the eastern United States. The weather can turn on a dime. A sunny afternoon can become a freezing, foggy nightmare in 20 minutes. A hiker steps off a trail, gets disoriented, and is never seen again. Search and rescue teams, they know this story. They're professionals. They have a system. They have dogs, they have helicopters, they have grid search patterns. They always find a sign, a footprint, a dropped backpack, a candy wrapper, a body. It's sad, but it's logical and it follows rules. But the stories from Shut-In Gap, in places like it, all over Appalachia, they don't follow those rules. This is what former detective David Politis has documented for years in his Missing 411 research. The disappearances in this area, they're different. They have a pattern. A wrong pattern. A train hiker vanishes on a clear day, on a simple, well-marked trail. Search dogs are brought in, and they can't find a scent. But they follow the trail to one specific point, and the scent just stops, as if the person was lifted up into the air. Or a child vanishes from a campsite, sometimes from right beside their parent. No one hears a scream. No one sees a struggle. They're just gone. Let's talk about a real case. One of the most famous and most heartbreaking in the history of the Great Smoky Mountains. The case of Dennis Martin. June 14th, 1969. Spencefield, Tennessee. The Martin family is there for a picnic. Dennis is just 6 years old and is playing a simple game of hide and seek with his brothers and father. Dennis darts behind a large bush to hide. His father is less than 30 feet away, and he never sees him again. There's no scream, no sound at all actually. 1 second he's there, the next, he's gone. What followed next was one of the largest search operations in the park history. Hundreds of volunteers, the National Guard, Special Forces, Green Berets. They searched for months, and they found nothing. Not a shoe, not a thread. The search dogs couldn't find a single trace. He had vanished. But that isn't the strange part. The very first night of the search, another family, the Key family, was hiking several miles away from the search area. They heard a sound in the woods, an awful, high-pitched sound. They saw a figure running, hiding behind the trees. They saw it clearly. It was a small boy. It had to be Dennis. But there was something with him. A large, dark thing. It was standing on hind legs, just watching them from the shadows. A park ranger later told the Key family, "Don't mention what you saw. It'll only confuse the search." That was in 1969. The case is still open. This is the reality behind the legend of Shut-In Gap. The stories the old-timers tell aren't just about getting lost. They're about vanishing, instantly, silently, in defiance of all logic. They're about strange figures in the woods. They're about search dogs that suddenly go mute and tuck their tails. The legends say these mountains take people. The missing 411 files, the real police and ranger reports, they seem to agree. What's happening in these woods? Is it a predator we don't know about? Or is it the land itself? Is it hungry? The knot deer breaks the rule of biology, but the disappearances at Shut-In Gap, they seem to break the rules of physics. It's one thing to vanish. It's another to be erased. But there's one story, one legend in Appalachia that is so powerful, so well documented. It's said that even a president of the United States was involved. A story so terrifying that the state of Tennessee has official markers for it. I'm talking, of course, about the Bell Witch. But first, we'll have to travel through the Moonville Tunnel. It's just after midnight in Vinton County, Ohio. You're on a dare. You're standing at the mouth of the Moonville Tunnel. It's dark, a deep, heavy blackness that seems to drink the beam of your flashlight. Your heart jumps. You hear a train coming. But that's impossible. These tracks were torn up decades ago. And then you see it. At the far end of the tunnel, a light swinging back and forth, like an old railroad lantern. It's getting closer. You see the shape of a man holding it. A man in old-fashioned railroad overalls. You shout, "Hello?" The figure stops. He lifts his lantern high, and in that dim, oily light, you see he doesn't have a head. We've talked about hauntings born from family secrets. We've talked about creatures that blur the lines between animal and myth. But some legends aren't born from curses or strange biology. They're born from iron and steam and speed. They're stamped into the land itself by a single moment of sudden, violent tragedy. In the deep woods of Ohio, there's a crumbling brick tunnel, and it's all that's left of a town that's been dead for 70 years. But the town isn't empty. This isn't just a local ghost story. The Moonville Tunnel is an Appalachian legend where the true part is written in verified railroad accident records, and the paranormal investigations are still happening today. And if I'm ever able to go full-time on YouTube, I'll make a whole documentary there. First, you have to understand, Moonville isn't a town anymore. It's just foundations left in the woods. But in the 1870s, it was a bustling, isolated coal and iron town, stuck deep in the forest of Vinton County. The only thing that connected it to the outside world was the Marietta and Cincinnati Railroad, a single track that ran through the infamous Moonville Tunnel. The tunnel was a death trap from day one. It was built on a sharp curve, so the engineers couldn't see if the track was clear. It was narrow, and it was dark. And for the people of Moonville who had to walk those tracks to get anywhere, that combination was deadly. There was no schedule, no warning, just the sudden thunder of a train, and nowhere to run. The legend says dozens of people died in that tunnel, and the historic record, it backs it up. We're not talking about folklore, we're talking about verified accident reports. There's a story of a young woman walking home, struck and killed by the Night Express. There's an engineer who died in a head-on collision at the tunnel's mouth, and the most famous, the one who stayed, was the brakeman. Story goes that back in the 1880s, he was on top of a freight car, a common job back then. He was checking the couplings, his lantern in his hand, and he forgot about the tunnel. He didn't duck in time. And the low ceiling of the tunnel, it took his head. When they found his body, he was still holding the lantern, but his head, it was never recovered. And ever since that night, he's been seen. For over 100 years, railroad engineers and later locals and ghost hunters have all reported the same terrifying sight. A dark, headless figure walking the old track bed. He's pacing back and forth, swinging his lantern. They say he's still on duty. They say he's still looking for his head. It was so common that engineers on the M&C line would report seeing the ghost just as another landmark. Past the Moonville light at 3:05 a.m., all clear. They rationalized it, they accepted it. It was just part of the run. The train stopped running in the 1980s, the tracks were pulled up, and the town of Moonville is long gone. But the ghost isn't. The Moonville Tunnel is now one of the most famous haunted sites in Ohio, and it's one of the few places where paranormal investigators consistently get results. Teams have gone in with electromagnetic field detectors, thermal cameras, and audio recorders. They've recorded EVP, electronic voice phenomenon. They'd ask, "Is anybody here?" And the playback revealed a faint, whispery voice. "Get out." They'd capture, clear as day, the sound of a steam whistle in a valley where no train has run in 40 years. Again and again, they see the light, a floating, swinging orb of light moving down the center of the tunnel, with no one and nothing holding it. The Moonville Tunnel isn't a legend. It's a scar. It's a place where so much tragedy happened. It's just stuck on a loop. The past is loud, so it just keeps playing over and over again for anyone brave or foolish enough to listen. But the ghosts of Moonville, they're trapped by an event. They're echoes. What happens when the spirit isn't an echo? What happens when it's aware? When it's intelligent and it hates you? There's one legend in Tennessee so powerful, so well documented, it involved a future president of the United States. a haunting so violent it became an official unsolved murder. I'm talking about the Bell Witch. It's 1818. Betsy Bell, a young girl in Tennessee, cries out from the pitch black of her family cabin. It feels like invisible hands are pulling her hair, yanking her from bed. Her father, John Bell, rushes in with a lamp, his face pale with fear, and he finds the room is empty. Then, from the shadows in the corner, a new voice speaks. It's not his wife. It's not his daughter. It's a dry, whispering cackle, and it says, "We're not going to let you sleep tonight, John Bell, or any night." It wasn't just a haunting, it was an infestation. We've heard legends that are just whispers, a strange swinging light in the dark tunnel. We've heard of creatures that hide in the fog, like the knot deer. What happens when the legend isn't just seen? What happens when it talks? When it argues, quotes scripture, and sings mocking songs? What happens when it kills? This is, without a doubt, the most famous and most documented haunting in American history. It didn't just scare a single family, it terrorized an entire town. It drew the attention of a future president of the United States. And it ended in a verified, unsolved murder. The state of Tennessee officially recognizes the story as part of its history. This is the true, terrifying tale of the Bell Witch. It starts, as all these things do, with a very normal family. The year is 1817 in Adams, Tennessee. John Bell is a successful farmer, a respected church elder, a pillar of his community. He has a wife named Lucy and 9 children. Dude couldn't pull out of a driveway, let alone his wife. They are the 1800s equivalent of the perfect American family. And then it begins. Rationally at first. First, John Bell is in a cornfield when he sees a strange animal. It has the body of a dog, but the head of a rabbit. He shoots it, and the animal just vanishes. He thinks it's a trick of the light. He rationalizes it. He goes home, and he tells his wife. They agree that they're not going to tell anybody. Then the sounds start. Faint knocking on the outside of the cabin at first. John and his sons grab their rifles, race outside into the night, and find nothing. No person, no prankster, no footprints. The sounds then move inside. The sounds of claws scraping on the wooden floors. It sounds like a dog chewing on a bedpost. It sounds like somebody choking, gasping for air, right in the center of the room. The children complain that something is pulling the blankets off their bed in the middle of the night. The family's terrified, but they're also embarrassed. They're good, religious, God-fearing folk. This doesn't happen to people like them. They rationalize it. It's the wind. It's rats in the walls. It's just sleep paralysis. They tell themselves it's anything but what they truly fear it is. You can't rationalize a voice. It started as a faint whisper, just on the edge of hearing, like a weak, old woman humming. And then it grew stronger. Soon, it was a chorus of voices, cackling, arguing, singing hymns completely out of tune, and then cursing, sometimes in the same breath. It was intelligent. It was vicious. It could hold conversations with anybody who dared to speak to it. It quoted scripture perfectly, debating theology with the local pastor. Wendigoon would have ran in fear. And it focused all of its pure, unfiltered hatred on 2 people. John Bell, who it called Old Jack, and his young daughter Betsy. The invisible entity began to attack her physically. Betsy was slapped hard by an unseen hand, leaving bright red welts on her face for the whole town to see. Her hair was pulled. She was pinched, poked, bruised. This was no longer a secret. John was desperate. Finally, he confessed his situation to a neighbor, James Johnston. Johnston was a brave man, and he agreed to stay the night. He heard the voices. He saw the bed covers fly off of his own bed. He felt the slaps. The next morning, he left pale and horrified. The secret was out. The Bell house was possessed. The story spread across Tennessee like wildfire. It went all the way to Nashville, and it caught the ear of General Andrew Jackson. Now, Jackson was not a man who was scared easily. This was Old Hickory, a hardened war hero of the War of 1812. He was fascinated. He supposedly called it the most interesting thing he'd ever heard of. So he gathered a wagon of his toughest men. Some accounts say a witch tamer was with them, and they rode to the Bell farm, absolutely determined to expose it as a hoax. And then they got to the property line. The wagon stopped. It just stopped. The horses strained, their muscles bunching, but the wagon wouldn't budge. It was as if it was nailed to the earth. The men shouted, they whipped the horses, and nothing. They could not move. Then, according to the legend, a sharp metallic voice cackled from the woods. "All right, General, let the wagon move." And just like that, the wagon rolled forward, easy as you please. Andrew Jackson, a man who would later become president of the United States, supposedly turned to his men that he had gathered and said, "I would rather fight the entire British army than face whatever is in that house." He turned his men around and left immediately. With a future president defeated, the entity gloated. It became more powerful, more arrogant, and it focused all of its rage on John Bell. It tormented him for the next 3 years, and it caused him to have seizures. It cursed him endlessly. "I'm gonna get you, old Jack," it would whisper. "I'm gonna kill you." In October of 1820, John Bell fell violently ill. He lingered for weeks, his body racked with fits, his throat swelling, and he finally slipped into a coma. The family found a strange, smoky-looking vial in the medicine cabinet, a vial that didn't belong to them. They were terrified. They brought the doctor, who tested a single drop on the family cat. The cat died almost instantly. Oh my God, I forgot about this part. 1800s medicine. Holy crap. The cat died almost instantly. It was poison. As the family stood there in shock, the entity's voice filled the house, and it wasn't whispering anymore. It was booming, laughing. It was triumphant. "I gave old Jack a big dose of that while he was sleeping." John Bell died December 20th, 1820. The official cause of death remains a mystery, but the family, the town, and the historic record all point to the same culprit, the Bell Witch. It's the only case in American history where a spirit confessed to the murder. After John Bell's death, the entity's power began to fade. It terrorized Betsy for a while, ensuring her engagement was broken off, and then it left. But it left with a promise. It said it would return in 7 years. And it did. Then it said it would return in 107 years. That date was 1935. But the people in Adams, Tennessee, they'll tell you, it never really left. The Bell Witch isn't just a story, it's a historic event. But what happens when the legend isn't a single ghost, but a creature? A warning. What happens when the legend is a prophecy? There's a story in West Virginia of a winged red-eyed monster that terrorized an entire town for one horrible year. It wasn't just a random sighting, it was a harbinger. A warning that 46 people were about to die. It's 5 p.m., December 15th, 1967. Rush hour in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. The Silver Bridge is packed. Bumper to bumper traffic. People headed home for the weekend. Their cars full of Christmas presents. They're thinking about dinner. They're thinking about Friday night. They are not thinking about the strange red-eyed thing that people have been seeing in the sky for the last 13 months. They're not thinking about the frantic, whispered warnings. And then they hear a sound, like a rifle shot, magnified 1,000 times. A single, massive eye bar snaps. And in less than a minute, the entire bridge and 46 people vanish into the icy, black water of the Ohio River. We've talked about hauntings that solve murders and hauntings that commit them, but this one's different. This isn't a story about the past. This is a story about the future. The Silver Bridge collapse is a documented historical tragedy. It's a fact, an engineering failure. But what science cannot explain is what happened in Point Pleasant for 13 months leading up to that day. This is the story of the most terrifying and well-documented harbinger in American history. A creature that came to warn an entire town of its doom. This is the true, verified story of the Mothman. It starts just over a year earlier, November 15th, 1966. Two young couples, Roger and Linda Scarberry and Steve and Mary Millette, are driving late at night near the abandoned World War II munitions plant. It's a place locals in Point Pleasant call the TNT area. It's isolated, it's dark, and it's already got a reputation. Their car's headlights cut through the blackness and land on something. It's standing by an old generator. It's 6, maybe 7 feet tall, shaped like a man, but it's wrong. It has no head, or its head is sunken into its chest, and from the back, huge 10-foot wings are folded. And then it turns, and they see the eyes. 2 enormous, glowing red eyes. The couples panic, and Roger, who's driving, slams the gas pedal. The car fishtails on the gravel, speeding away back toward the main road. And then it flies. This isn't a glimpse, this is a chase. Roger's pushing his car to 100 miles per hour, going down Route 62, and this thing is keeping up with them. It's not flapping its wings, not like a bird. It's just gliding, effortlessly, right alongside them. And then they hear a high-pitched, metallic screeching, like a woman's scream or a giant rat. And those huge red eyes are staring right into the car window. They don't stop driving until they get to the Mason County Courthouse. They're so terrified they're barely coherent. They barge into the sheriff's office and file a police report. This is the first true anchor. This isn't folklore, this is a documented event. The deputy goes back out to the TNT area with Roger. They find nothing. The deputy, listening to the story, rationalizes it. It was just a big bird, he said. A sandhill crane. An unusually large heron. You kids were just spooked. But the sightings, they didn't stop. They exploded. The next night, another resident, Marcella Bennett, is driving near the same spot with her family. A winged figure rises up in front of her car. It's so big it seems to fill the windshield. She's so scared, she drives home, locks her family inside, and is too terrified to even call the police. The local newspaper, the Point Pleasant Register, runs the story, "Couple sees man-sized bird, creature, something," and the town breaks open. Over the next 13 months, hundreds of people see it. And these aren't just kids anymore. They're teachers, firemen, pilots. The police stop rationalizing it and they start documenting it. It's seen peering in windows, it's seen swooping over the Ohio River, and it's seen landing on the Silver Bridge itself. The town is in a state of absolute panic. And alongside the creature, other strange things start happening. People report seeing men in black. Not the movie, but they see strange, pale men in dark old-fashioned suits driving brand new Cadillacs. They ask bizarre questions and warn people to stop talking about what they've seen. Phones ring with bizarre electronic screeching sounds. The creature, the Mothman, seems to be drawn to one place above all others, the Silver Bridge. People report seeing it perch on the structure, its red eyes glowing in the night, just watching traffic. And for 13 months it watches, then on December 14th, 1967, the sightings just stop. Completely. The Mothman is gone. The next day, December 15th, 1967, at 5 p.m., during rush hour traffic, the Silver Bridge, loaded with 31 vehicles, collapses into the river. 46 people die in the tragedy. The investigation, the real investigation, showed that a single, tiny, 2.5-inch crack in one single eyebar, a crack that had been there for decades, finally failed, bringing the whole thing down. It was a structural failure, a tragedy. It was rational. But the people of Point Pleasant, they knew the truth. The Mothman wasn't a monster come to cause the disaster. It was a prophet, a warning. It was trying to tell them what was about to happen, and the only way it knew how. It was drawn to the tragedy, the way its namesake, a real moth, is drawn to a flame. The hundreds of police reports, newspaper articles, and eyewitness accounts, they all proved the sightings happened. The collapse of the Silver Bridge is a historical fact. The legend and the reality happened in the same place at the same time. The Mothman was a harbinger of a sudden, violent end. But not all of the area's legends are so complicated. Sometimes the legend isn't a ghost, or a warning, or a creature that mimics deer. Sometimes it's exactly what it sounds like. If, again, I've made this promise earlier in this video, if I can turn this channel into a full-time job and I don't have the responsibilities I have weighing me down right now, I promise you I will reinvest the money from this channel, buy a big swath of land in Appalachia, and I will do my absolute best to capture a living Appalachian Black Panther. The way you can help with that is to subscribe and like this video if you've made it this far, but I promise you I will keep that promise. If this ever becomes like an actual thing. It may not. It's also an improbability to be successful on YouTube compared to the amount of YouTube channels, but we'll see. Either way, we started our journey tonight in a courtroom with the spirit of Zona Shue, pointing a ghostly finger at her killer. We stood in a field in Tennessee as police documented the unexplainable killings of the Wampus Cat. We looked into the forward-facing eyes of a creature that shouldn't exist, the knot deer. We felt the silence of Shut-In Gap, where the real-life missing 411 files prove that the land itself is hungry. We saw the swinging lantern and the Moonville Tunnel, a tragedy stamped into time, proven by accident reports. We heard the Bell Witch confess to a murder. We watched the Mothman Prophecy come true in a horrific, historic collapse. The The line between the world we think we know and the one that waits in the shadows is thin. In these ancient mountains, the past is not dead. It's not even past. These legends are not just stories, they are reports, they are warnings, they are true. And if you're a fan of spooky stuff, strange things, dark stories and mysteries, and you've listened this far, just know you're in the right place. You're in the other side, and you're always welcome here. Good night.